the sound of a wine glass shattering against a marble floor. 300 guests in silk and black ties go silent. A string quartet stops mid-note, and at the altar of the most expensive wedding Seoul has seen in a decade, Kang Ji-soo, a man whose name makes prosecutors lose sleep, stands frozen, not because of the glass, because of the 3 small children standing in the aisle, laughing. Here's what you need to understand. 41 months ago, Kang Ji-soo buried his wife. There was a death certificate, a hospital record, a closed casket that he never opened, because a man like him doesn't grieve publicly. He grieves in decisions. His wife, Amara Carter, was declared dead at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. But the woman now stepping out of the service corridor of this 5-star wedding venue, she has Amara's face, Amara's walk, and she's looking at those 3 children, the oldest of whom has Jisoo's exact eyes, like they are the only reason she is breathing. Do the math. 41 months. The triplets look roughly 3 years old, which means whoever this woman is, she was pregnant when she died. And the bride standing next to Jisoo right now, her fingers just went to her collarbone, touching a pearl necklace, and her face has gone white. Not surprised. White. Caught white. If you think this is a story about a woman coming back from the dead, you're wrong. This is a story about who killed her in the first place, and I promise you, the answer is not who you think. Subscribe to Aurora Love Saga and hit that bell, because what happens next changes everything you think you know about loyalty, about silence, and about the terrifying difference between protecting someone and destroying them. Now, let's go back 41 months to the night Kang Ji-soo signed a document that would ruin his life. The Shilla Hotel Ballroom. April. Cherry blossoms arranged in crystal vases worth more than most people's cars. Kang Ji-soo stood at the altar in a charcoal Tom Ford suit, and every person in that room was terrified of him. Not because he looked angry, because he looked like nothing. His face was a closed door. His posture was geometry, precise, calculated, revealing exactly 0. His hands were clasped in front of him, and if you looked carefully, which no one dared to, his left thumb was pressing against his right cufflink, adjusting it, rotating it, a habit so small it was almost invisible. Almost. The bride, Shin Yura, walked down the aisle like she was collecting a throne, ivory dress, cathedral train, a smile that had been rehearsed in mirrors for months. Her fingers drifted to the string of pearls at her collarbone as she reached him, a gesture she made whenever she needed to steady herself or whenever she was performing. The officiant began speaking, and Jisoo's hand drifted to his inner jacket pocket, just for a moment, touching something. A folded document he'd carried for over 3 years. He'd never shown it to anyone, the document in his pocket. The audience reads this as guilt, as proof he was involved in whatever happened to Amara. A man doesn't carry evidence of innocence. He carries evidence of what haunts him. The officiant asked if anyone objected. Silence. But here's the thing about silence in a room full of powerful people. It doesn't mean agreement. It means everyone is waiting to see who moves first. Nobody moved, and that was the last peaceful moment of the evening. Because 30 seconds later, a side door opened, and 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, all roughly 3 years old, tumbled into the ballroom like a small, beautiful hurricane. But that's not where we start. Not really. We start 41 months before this night, in a law office that smelled like old paper and new money. The first time Amara Carter met Kang Ji-soo, she thought he was furniture, not because he was still, because he was so deliberately placed in that leather chair, so architecturally composed, that he seemed like something the interior designer had chosen to complete the room. Dark suit, dark eyes, a face that could have been carved from something expensive and cold. She sat across from him in the offices of Hwan and Park Legal, wearing a blazer she'd bought secondhand and shoes she'd polished herself that morning, and she did not blink first. The attorney explained the situation with the mechanical sympathy of someone billing by the hour. Amara had been pulled into a financial investigation, not as a suspect, but as a material witness connected to a shipping company Jisu's organization had quietly absorbed. Her testimony could either shield the organization or expose it. The simplest legal protection? A spousal privilege clause. Marry into the family. Testimony becomes inadmissible. A contract marriage, the attorney said. 12 months, full financial support, complete discretion. Amara looked at Jisu. "And what do you get out of this?" she asked. His thumb moved to his cufflink. One rotation. "Legal insulation. So I'm a tool. You're a solution." He said it without malice, without warmth, like he was describing a chess piece. "I'm not asking for your opinion of me," Amara said, and her voice had a quality that made the attorney's pen stop moving. Quiet, but with the kind of weight that doesn't come from volume. It comes from someone who has decided exactly where their line is. "I'm asking if you understand that I'm a person agreeing to this, not a piece being moved." Jisu's thumb stopped rotating the cufflink. He looked at her, really looked, for the first time. "Noted," he said, and something in the room shifted. Not warmth, not yet, but the first recognition that this woman was not going to be a quiet signature on a quiet document. She was going to be a problem. The good kind. But you already know that's not how this ends. So let me tell you what happened next. And pay attention, because one detail in the next scene will change everything when you hear it again later. 3 months into the contract marriage, Kang Jisu's penthouse had a sound it had never made before. Laughter. Not his, obviously. The man laughed the way statues sneeze, theoretically possible, never witnessed. Amara had a habit of cooking late at night, not Korean food, Southern American food, cornbread, greens, blackened catfish, the kind of cooking that fills a space with warmth whether you invited it or not. And she'd play music while she cooked. Low, soulful, the sort of thing that drifted under closed doors. Jisu would sit in his study pretending to work and listen. He never went to the kitchen, never acknowledged it. But he started staying up later, working slower, finding reasons to be in the penthouse when midnight came around. One night she knocked on his study door. Didn't wait for permission. Walked in with a plate. "You haven't eaten since this morning," she said. "I'm not asking if you want it. I'm telling you to eat." There it was again. "I'm not asking." Her signature phrase. Her way of telling the world she had already decided. He stared at the plate. Cornbread, a small portion of braised greens, steam rising. "I don't eat at my desk." Then moved to the table. He didn't move, but he ate at the desk, and he didn't adjust his cufflinks once. That was the crack, not a dramatic one, not a confession or a kiss, just a man eating food a woman made because she noticed he was hungry. It sounds small, it was everything. And the thing about cracks is, they let light in, but they also let other things in, things that see the light and want to put it out. Later that same week, Jisu sat in this very study past 2 a.m. The music from the kitchen had stopped hours ago. Amara was asleep, and Jisu was signing a document, a transfer order. His pen moved with the precision of someone who signs documents that change lives and knows it. When he finished, he folded it once, placed it in an envelope, and locked it in his desk drawer. His face, illuminated by a single lamp, showed nothing, but his thumb found his cufflink, and it rotated. Again and again. Jisu signed something that led to Amara's disappearance. He looks guilty. He looks like a man making a cold decision about a woman who just fed him cornbread. The document, by the way, said something very specific at the top, but we're not going to read it yet. Shinyura had been part of Jisu's world for 7 years before Amara's name ever entered it. And here's where I need you to pay attention. Because Yura is not a cartoon. She is not a woman who twirls her hair and schemes in dark rooms. She is a woman who built her entire identity around one belief. She was the only person equipped to stand beside Kang Jisoo and survive. She'd grown up in the same circles, understood the alliances, the debts, the silent language of power that operated in boardrooms and backrooms across Gangnam. She knew which families controlled which judges. She knew which port agreements funded which politicians. She knew how to smile at a man whose hands were dirty and make him feel clean. And she had loved Jisoo, genuinely, in the way that people love someone they've studied for years, thoroughly, strategically, and with the absolute conviction that no one else could do it better. So when the contract marriage happened, Yura didn't panic. 12 months, legal necessity, she understood. But then she started hearing things. That Amara wasn't staying quiet. That Amara was asking Jisoo questions no one asked him. Not about business, but about him. That Amara had rearranged the kitchen. That Amara made him eat. And worst of all, that Jisoo had started coming home earlier. Yura watched this from the outside, and for the first time in 7 years, she felt something she had never allowed herself to feel. Fear. Not jealousy. Fear. Because she genuinely believed that if Jisoo softened, if he let this woman pass the walls that kept him alive, his enemies would eat him whole. Love wasn't a luxury in their world, it was a liability. And Amara, brilliant as she was, did not understand the cost. Then the information arrived. Amara was pregnant, not just pregnant, carrying triplets. Yura sat in her apartment in Cheongdam-dong, staring at the medical report her contact had provided, and her fingers went to the pearls at her collarbone. She held them for a very long time. When she finally spoke, it was to the empty room. He'll never leave now. And in her mind, that meant one thing. He'll never survive. She picked up the phone and called Dr. Moon Ji-hyuk. What she asked him to do would destroy 3 lives. What she believed she was doing was saving one. But here's the line that locks it. 2 weeks later, Yura sat across from Jisoo in his office, and she said calmly, "The arrangement is in place. Everything will be handled." Jisoo looked at her with that closed-door face, and he said, 4 words that will haunt this story. It had to be done. Jisoo agreed. Jisoo knew. And that's the moment love turned into war. But the first casualty wasn't Amara. It was the truth. Dr. Moon Ji-hyuk was not a brave man. He was a competent one, board certified, respected at Seoul National University Hospital. The kind of doctor who kept his head down, did exceptional work, and never ever asked where his funding came from. When Yura contacted him, she didn't just offer money. She mapped out exactly what would happen to his career, his license, and his family if he refused. Then she offered the money anyway, because Yura understood that a person controlled by both threat and reward is controlled completely. Ji-hyuk agreed. The plan was clinical. During a routine monitoring visit for Amara's high-risk pregnancy, he would fabricate a critical complication, emergency protocols, transfer to a restricted ward, and then a death certificate filed before morning. Simple, clean, paper trail perfect. But here's what Yura didn't calculate. When the moment came, when Ji-hyuk stood over Amara, unconscious from the sedative he'd administered, monitors beeping softly in the half-dark of a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and lies, he saw her hands. They were resting on her stomach, curved around the shape of the 3 lives growing inside her, protective even in unconsciousness, and Ji-hyuk's hands started shaking. He filed the death certificate. He followed the protocol. To the world, to every system that mattered, Amara Carter was dead as of 11:47 p.m., a Tuesday in October. But he didn't let her die. He moved her, off the grid, out of the hospital's records, into a small clinic in Incheon run by a colleague who owed him a decade-old favor and knew better than to ask questions. Then he did something that would take years to understand. He gave Amara the money, every one that Yura had paid him, placed it in an envelope next to the bed where Amara would wake up. When she opened her eyes, disoriented and terrified, he told her the truth. To the world, you're dead. The woman who arranged this will not stop, and the man you married." He hesitated. "What about him?" Amara's voice was raw. Ji-hyuk chose his next words, knowing they would be the cruelest mercy he'd ever deliver. "He signed a transfer order for you. I don't know what he intended, but the woman who did this used his authority to make it happen." Amara's hand went to her stomach. "Then I'm already gone," she said. She didn't cry. Not then. The crying would come later. Weeks later, in a rented room above a laundromat in Busan, at 3 a.m, when the weight of being alive and being erased hit her simultaneously. But in that moment, she was made of iron. She took the money. She left. And she carried 3 futures inside her into a world that had just declared her non-existent. And here's what no one, not Yura, not Ji-hyuk, not even Amara herself, knew yet. The transfer order Jisoo signed, it wasn't what any of them thought it was. But that truth was locked in a desk drawer in a penthouse. And the only person who knew what it really said was a man who had just been told his wife was dead. This is the part of the story that breaks differently, because Amara didn't just survive. She didn't curl up and wait for rescue. She took the wreckage of her life and she built something from it. And the building almost killed her twice. Busan, a city that didn't know her name, a country whose language she spoke imperfectly, but whose rhythms she had absorbed during 3 months in Jisoo's penthouse. She found a room she could afford. She found a clinic that would accept cash. She found a version of herself she didn't know existed. The pregnancy was brutal. Triplets. High risk. She spent 2 weeks on modified bed rest in that rented room, eating rice and kimchi from the convenience store downstairs, talking to her stomach because there was no one else to talk to. She faced the particular cruelty of being a black woman alone in a foreign country. The stares that lasted too long, the landlord who almost refused her, the nurse at the clinic who spoke to her slowly as if she might not understand, until Amara responded in Korean sharp enough to make the woman's eyebrows climb. The birth was early, 34 weeks, an emergency that happened at 2 a.m. with only 1 doctor and 1 nurse, and Amara's own voice counting through contractions that felt like the earth splitting open. 3 children. The first boy came out screaming, with dark eyes that held an unsettling focus. Jisoo's eyes in a miniature face. The second boy was quieter, watchful, with Amara's composure already visible in the way he went still instead of crying. The girl came last, and she smiled. Or her face made the shape of a smile, which is different, but Amara chose to believe it was real. She named them herself, Haniul, Sky, Seo-jun, Auspicious Truth, Nari, Lily. And then she lived. Years passed, not in a montage, in the accumulation of 10,000 small decisions, working night shifts at a translation firm, learning to soothe 3 crying infants with only 2 hands, watching Korean dramas to improve her fluency while the triplets slept on a mattress on the floor. She became sharper, harder in places, softer in others. The kind of woman who walks into a room and you can feel the boundary before she even speaks. I'm not asking became a philosophy, not just a phrase. She wasn't asking for permission. She wasn't asking for sympathy. She wasn't asking to exist. She just did. And here's a small, ironic detail that deserves a dark little laugh. By the time the triplets were 2, Hanul, the one with Jisoo's eyes, had developed a habit of adjusting his shirt cuffs when he was thinking hard about something, pulling at them, straightening them. A gesture no one had taught him, a gesture inherited from a man he'd never met. Genetics are petty like that. But while Amara was building, something else was happening, something she didn't know about, something happening back in Seoul, in a penthouse that now echoed differently. And that something brings us to a question you need to sit with for a minute. What was Kang Jisoo doing for those 3 years? Here's what the world saw. Kang Jisoo, after the death of his contract wife, continued operating exactly as expected. Board meetings, territory negotiations, political alignments. The empire didn't pause. The machine kept running. Here's what the world didn't see. 3 private investigators, hired sequentially, each tasked with one job: Find inconsistencies in Amara's death record. Find the body. Find the truth. The first investigator found nothing. The records were immaculate. Ji-hyuk's work was clean. The second investigator found a single anomaly, a gap in the hospital's transfer logs, a 4-hour window where no records existed, and then abruptly quit the case, citing personal reasons. The third investigator was better. She found the anomaly, traced it to a secondary system backup, and pulled a partial file showing that a patient had been moved from the ward Amara was in. Not to the morgue, but to an unlisted vehicle bay. She brought this to Jisoo on a rainy Thursday in his office. He sat behind his desk and read the report. His thumb went to his cufflink and stayed there. "This suggests she was moved alive," the investigator said. "I know what it suggests." "What do you want me to do?" Jisoo was silent for 11 seconds. The investigator counted, "Find her." But the trail went cold in Incheon, then cold again in Busan. Every lead dissolved, every thread snipped, as if someone was deliberately erasing the path behind Amara. He searched, but he also said it had to be done to Yura about the arrangement. So which is it? Was he searching for real or searching for show? Assumes the latter. He's performing grief. He's covering his tracks. The search was theater. But the truth, the real truth, was simpler and more devastating than any theory. Jisoo had signed that transfer order because he'd received intelligence that a rival organization had identified Amara as leverage. The transfer was supposed to move her to a private, secure medical facility outside Seoul's grid. It was protection, pure, strategic, unsentimental protection. The only language he knew, Yura intercepted the transfer authorization, used it as institutional cover for her own operation. The hospital staff who processed Amara's death saw Jisoo's signature on the transfer and assumed it was all sanctioned from the top. His shield became the weapon used against the person he was trying to shield, and he never knew until now. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Because right now, the story needs you back at that wedding, where 3 children are standing in an aisle, and a dead woman is very much alive. Amara didn't come back for revenge. This is important. Hold it in your mind because everything that follows will tempt you to forget it. She came back because of a photograph. Nari, the youngest by 4 minutes, the girl with the smile, had found a Korean entertainment magazine in the waiting room of a dentist's office, and on the cover was a picture of a man in a suit at a press event. She'd brought it home and said, with the devastating simplicity of a 3-year-old, "Yama, that man has Hanul's eyes." Amara had taken the magazine, looked at the cover, and felt the floor tilt. Kang Jisoo announces spring wedding to Shin Yura. She could have burned the magazine. She could have moved again. She could have continued being dead. Instead, she bought 3 small outfits, booked a train to Seoul, and applied for a temporary catering position at the Shilla Hotel, where the wedding of the year was being held. Not as a guest, not as a wife, as invisible. Amara isn't here to disrupt. She's here to observe, to see who Kang Jisoo has become without her. She will place herself in his orbit and watch what he does when the truth surfaces, and how it surfaces will be unplanned, chaotic, driven by 3 toddlers who don't understand the concept of staying hidden. But her real test is this. When he sees her alive, will his first instinct be control? Managing the situation, the optics, the room? Or will it be something else? He doesn't know this is a test. He doesn't know she's watching not his words, but his hands. She arrived 3 hours before the ceremony, changed into the catering uniform, put her hair up, kept her eyes down. The triplets were with a trusted friend in a service room on the hotel's 2nd floor with strict instructions. Stay. Here. Do not move. But if you've ever met a 3-year-old, you know that strict instructions are suggestions written in disappearing ink. Amara moved through the ballroom carrying champagne flutes, invisible, unremarkable. Just another face in a uniform that powerful people don't bother looking at. She passed within 6 feet of Yura, who was adjusting her veil in a hallway mirror. Pearls at her collarbone, steady hands, the face of a woman who had already won. Amara felt nothing, Or rather, she felt everything, compressed into a shape small and hard enough to swallow. She had one job: watch, assess, decide. And then Hanul found the staircase. Here's what happened in the 90 seconds that detonated Kang Jisoo's carefully constructed world. Hanul, who had inherited his father's instinct for finding the most strategically important room in any building, had slipped away from the babysitter. Seo-jun followed because Seo-jun always followed Hanul. Nari followed because she heard music, and Nari always followed music. They found the ballroom the way water finds a crack, inevitably. The doors opened. 3 small figures in matching outfits tumbled into the aisle between 300 frozen guests. Hanul walked with focus. Seo-jun walked with caution. Nari twirled. And then Nari, because she was 3 and because the world was a stage, looked up at the tall man at the altar and said, loudly enough for the first 4 rows to hear, "Yama, the Eye Man!" Jisoo's world stopped, not metaphorically. His autonomic systems actually appeared to stall. His chest didn't move. His eyes, fixed on the little girl who was pointing at him with absolute certainty, went wide in a way that 300 guests had never witnessed from this man. His thumb went to his cufflink, pressed, didn't rotate, just pressed, like he was trying to hold on to something solid. Then his gaze tracked backward from the children, down the aisle, through the chaos of murmuring guests and confused security, to the service corridor, where Amara stood. She hadn't planned to be seen, but when your 3-year-old announces your presence to a room full of Mafia-adjacent elites, plans adjust. She stepped forward, removed the catering apron, stood in the aisle in a simple black dress she'd worn beneath the uniform, and she looked at Kang Jisoo with an expression that contained 3 years, 3 children, and 300 reasons to burn this building to the ground. She didn't burn it. She said, "I'm not asking for anything. I came to see the truth." Jisoo's hand dropped from his cufflink to his side, open, empty, and Yura's fingers went to her pearls, gripping, not touching, gripping. For a moment, it looks like this is the climax. The revelation. Jisoo sees Amara. The wedding stops. The truth is out. The audience expects reconciliation or confrontation. But watch what happens next, because Amara's test hasn't been passed yet. It hasn't even started. Jisoo took 1 step off the altar platform. His security detail moved, 4 men in black shifting like chess pieces, and he stopped them with a hand. "Clear the room." His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a man who has never had to repeat himself. "Jisoo," Yura started. "Clear the room." Here's where he failed. Let me ask you something, and I want you to actually answer this in the comments. If you were Amara, standing in that aisle with your 3 children, what would you need to see from this man? Not hear, see. What would his body need to do? Because what Jisoo did was this. He looked at Amara, then at the children, then at Yura, and his face closed. The door shut. The geometry returned. He reached for his cufflink. He defaulted to control. "We will discuss this privately," he said, and his voice was the temperature of January. Amara watched his hands, saw the cufflink, saw the door close, and she had her answer. His first instinct is management, not humanity. Control, not connection. He fails spectacularly, publicly, visibly, irreversibly. But how he fails matters. His hands were shaking when he reached for that cufflink. His voice cracked on privately so slightly that only Amara, standing 12 feet away with 3 years of studying absence, heard it. He wasn't cold. He was terrified. And terror in a man who is never afraid? That's data. The room Jisoo commandeered was a private suite on the hotel's executive floor. 12 minutes after the ballroom was cleared, he sat in a chair facing Amara, who stood by the window with her arms crossed, the triplets asleep on a sofa behind her, exhaustion having finally defeated their curiosity. Yura had been taken to a separate room by Jisoo's second-in-command, a woman named Kwan Mirai, who had the expression of someone cataloging everything she was witnessing for future strategic use. Jisoo spoke first. How? One word. Fractured. "Dr. Moon Ji-hyuk," Amara said. "He faked the death certificate, moved me out, gave me money, your money. Or rather, the money your fiancé paid him to make me disappear." "Yura? Yura?" Silence. "And the children." "Your children," Amara said. "Hanul, Seojun, Nari, 3 years old. They like rice cakes and cartoons and asking questions I can't answer, like why they don't have a father." Jisu's thumb moved to his cufflink. Amara watched it. "Stop doing that," she said. He froze. "Every time you're afraid, you do that. Adjust the cufflink, lock down, disappear behind the suit." She took a step closer. "I didn't come back for the man in the suit. I came back to see if there's anyone behind it." And then she said the thing that shattered him. "I know about the transfer order, Jisu. I know you signed a document. Ji-Yuk told me. So before you perform grief for me, tell me what you authorized." This is the moment Jisu reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the folded document he'd carried for 3 years, 4 months, and 11 days. He unfolded it, placed it on the table between them. Amara read it, and the room changed. The document is not a removal order. It is a request for emergency protective transfer, addressed to a private medical facility in Sejong City. It cites credible threat intelligence regarding the safety of a dependent individual within the Kang household. It is dated 2 days before Amara's death. It was never executed because the transfer was intercepted. Yura used the existence of this document, with Jisu's signature, as institutional cover. Hospital staff saw his authorization and assumed Amara's removal was sanctioned from above. Every scene the audience replayed, Jisu signing in the lamplight, his guilt, his "it had to be done," all of it recontextualizes. He wasn't authorizing her disappearance. He was trying to save her, and his failure to do so is the thing he's been carrying in his pocket for 41 months. "It had to be done," Amara said slowly, repeating the words Ji-Hyuk had relayed. "That's what you said to Yura. The arrangement. It had to be done." "The arrangement was a port negotiation with the Huang family," Jisu said, and his voice sounded like it was being dragged across gravel. "We were restructuring shipping lanes. Yura handled the logistics. When she said the arrangement, she meant the deal. When I said it had to be done, I meant the trade concession." He paused. "I wasn't talking about you. I was never talking about you. Jisu was never complicit. The guilty document was protective. The confirming conversation was about an entirely separate matter. The audience's framework for understanding the story fundamentally shifts." Amara stood very still. "Then why didn't you find me?" "I tried. 3 investigators. The trail was erased." "By whom?" "I don't know. But someone did know. And that someone was sitting in a room 2 floors below, touching the pearls at her collarbone and calculating whether the building had a service exit. When Jisu's people brought Yura into the suite, she didn't crumble. She didn't scream. She walked in, sat down, and crossed her ankles. "Before you do whatever you're going to do," she said, "ask me why." Jisu's jaw was granite. "I don't care why." "You should. Because the reason isn't what you think." She looked at Amara, and for the first time her expression wasn't performance. It was exhaustion. "I watched 4 men try to stand beside Jisu before you, political allies, business partners, family-approved candidates. Every single one of them was destroyed, not by Jisu, by the machinery around him, the investigations, the pressure campaigns, the quiet elimination of anyone who made him seem soft or reachable." Her fingers touched her pearls, but this time, the gesture was slow, unconscious. "You were kind. You were visible. You made him come home early. And every intelligence contact I had told me the same thing. The Huang family had already flagged you as a point of vulnerability. You were going to be used against him, and then you were going to be destroyed. Not metaphorically." She looked at the floor. "I didn't pay Ji-Yuk to kill you. I paid him to make you disappear, because disappearing was the only thing that could save you from what was coming. And I couldn't tell Jisu because Jisu would have gone to war, and war would have killed him." The room was silent. And here's the terrible thing. the thing that makes this story more than a fairy tale. She wasn't entirely wrong. The Huang family had flagged Amara. The threat intelligence Jisoo found, the one that prompted his transfer order, confirmed it. Yura's fear was based in reality. Her method was monstrous, but her diagnosis was accurate. For one moment, just one, sit with that. It looks like this is the end. Yura has confessed. Her logic is exposed. Jisoo now has the truth. The audience exhales, expecting the aftermath to be clean. Yura removed, Amara and Jisoo rebuilding. But Yura hasn't survived 7 years in this world by being a person who accepts defeat. So what happens now? Yura asked. You leave, Jisoo said. Everything you built through me is over. Yura stood, smoothed her dress, walked toward the door, and then she stopped. The children don't have legal documentation connecting them to you, she said without turning around. Amara Carter is legally dead, which means those 3 children in the eyes of Korean family law have no father and a dead mother. She turned just enough to show one eye. I wonder how long it takes a family court to rule on that. Yura weaponizes the very system she created. The fake death certificate becomes a legal weapon targeting the thing Jisoo just learned to value, his children. She left, and the war wasn't over. It had just changed shape. Yura moved fast. Within 72 hours, she had filed documentation with the Seoul Family Court challenging the legal status of the triplets. 3 children born to a legally dead woman and a man with no registered paternal claim. In the eyes of the bureaucracy, Hanul, Seo-jun, and Nari were ghosts. Simultaneously, she triggered a financial audit through contacts in the tax authority. Documents that connected Jisoo's organization to the hospital, where Amara's death was faked, implicating him in the fraud. His assets were flagged, his accounts frozen pending review. 2 attacks, synchronized, designed to force Jisoo into choosing fight for the empire or fight for the children. He couldn't do both, not in time. And this is where the story nearly broke Kang Jisoo, because the man who controlled everything, who moved through rooms like a weapon, who signed documents that rearranged economies, sat in his penthouse study at 2 a.m. staring at a legal brief and realized he had no move, not as a boss, not as a strategist, not as the man in the suit. The cufflink adjustment came and went, came and went, came and went. Then Amara opened the study door, without knocking, carrying a plate. You haven't eaten, he looked up. How did you get past security? I'm not asking about your security. I'm telling you to eat. She placed the plate on his desk. Cornbread, braised greens, steam rising. The exact same meal she'd made 3 years ago in this exact same room. And Jisoo broke. Not dramatically, not with sobs or speeches. His shoulders dropped by 2 inches. His hand came off the cufflink and pressed flat against the desk, and he exhaled, a sound that had been trapped in his chest for 41 months. I don't know how to fix this, he said, and those 6 words cost him more than any contract he'd ever signed. Amara sees it. He isn't performing. He isn't managing. He's admitting for the first time in her presence that he is outmatched. She changes the criteria. The new test is about this. Can he be afraid in front of her? Can he let the suit come off? You don't fix it as a boss, Amara said. You fix it as their father. I don't know how to do that either. No, you don't. And that's the first honest thing you've said to me since I came back. She sat down across from him, the same configuration as the lawyer's office 41 months ago, except this time neither of them was pretending. I need to tell you something, Jisoo said, and it's going to make you hate me before you understand me. The contract marriage wasn't just to protect you. Amara's expression didn't change. I know. You don't know all of it. He stood, walked to the window. Seoul glittered below like a circuit board, cold light, hot money. The legal case you were involved in, the shipping investigation. You were a material witness, yes, But you were also the only external contact who could connect 3 of my accounts to the port operations. Pause. Marrying you didn't just invoke spousal privilege, it moved you inside my legal perimeter. Anything you knew became protected, not because I was protecting you, because I was protecting the information you carried. He turned to face her. I married you to keep my empire safe. You were, at the beginning, a containment strategy. This doesn't make him more sympathetic. It makes him less. The audience, who has just spent 10 scenes rooting for this man, now realizes that his original motivation was selfish, strategic, cold. He didn't marry her to save her. He married her to save himself. The cornbread, the late nights, the crack in the architecture. All of that was real, but it grew from a foundation of calculation. Amara was quiet for a long time. When did it change? She asked. The cornbread, he said. And there was something in his voice that sounded like a man confessing to a priest. You fed me. No one feeds me. No one walks into my study without permission. No one tells me what to do. And you did all 3 in 60 seconds. He adjusted his cufflink once, then deliberately, visibly dropped his hand. By the time I signed that transfer order, I wasn't protecting information. I was protecting you, but I was too late. And I was too proud to tell you that the reason I was protecting you was because I started from a place of using you. So you carried the document for 41 months. As what? Punishment? As proof that I tried, even if I tried too late, even if I don't deserve credit for trying. Amara looked at him for a long time, and the audience should feel what she's feeling, which is not forgiveness. Not yet. It's the first beat of something harder than forgiveness. Understanding. She understood why he became this man, not because he was born cold, because he was born into a world that killed warmth on contact, and he learned to survive by becoming the cold. Every cufflink adjustment, every closed-door expression, every calculated marriage and strategic silence. He wasn't a monster. He was a man who had been taught that love and survival were mutually exclusive, and he'd chosen survival every time until the one time it mattered most. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Jisoo said. Good, because I'm not offering it, not yet. Amara stood, but I am offering something else. What? A chance. Not for us. For them. She nodded toward the hallway where the triplets were asleep. You don't get to be a husband first. You earn that. You start as a father, and fathers don't control. They show up. The legal war that followed was the kind that doesn't make headlines, but rearranges entire ecosystems. Yura's challenge to the children's legal status required Amara's death certificate to be investigated. The investigation required Dr. Ji-hyuk's testimony, and Ji-hyuk, who had spent 3 years in silence, finally spoke. Every piece of Yura's architecture came apart. The bribed hospital records, the intercepted transfer, the paid contacts. The financial audit she'd triggered backfired when investigators traced the paper trail, not to Jisoo, but to accounts Yura had established under shadow entities. Her allies evaporated. Her social standing collapsed. The families who had supported her, because she was useful, recalculated and found her expensive. But here's the price Jisoo paid. To legally establish paternity and protect the children's status, he had to open his organization's financial structure to judicial review. Not all of it, but enough. Enough to cost him 2 major port agreements, 3 political alliances, and the cloak of untouchability that had protected him for a decade. His lawyers begged him not to. Kwon Mireille, his second-in-command, told him flatly, "This will take 5 years to rebuild." Jisoo adjusted his cufflink, looked at it, and then for the first time anyone could remember, unfastened the cufflink and set it on the desk. Then we rebuild. The impossible test, the one Amara set without him knowing, is answered. Not with power, not with a speech, with sacrifice. He trades a piece of his empire for his children's legal existence. He trades untouchability for fatherhood. And the thing that costs him, it's not money, it's identity. The cufflink, his armor, his tell, his habit of hiding behind precision, comes off. The weeks that followed were not cinematic. They were Tuesday mornings and Thursday evenings, Jisoo sitting on the floor of Amara's Busan apartment because she refused to move back to Seoul, trying to get Nari to eat vegetables while Hanil studied him with those unsettling, familiar eyes, and Seo Jun quietly stacked blocks in the corner. He was bad at it. Spectacularly, painfully bad. He held Nari like a fragile contract. He spoke to Hanul in a voice more suited to board negotiations than bedtime stories. He sat so stiffly on the floor that Amara actually laughed. The first time she'd laughed in his presence in over 3 years. "You look like a man being held hostage by toddlers," she said. "I am being held hostage by toddlers. Welcome to parenthood." Slowly, in increments measured in rice cakes and finger paintings, and the gradual descent from chair to floor to lying flat on his back while Nari used his chest as a stage for her stuffed animals, Kang Ji-soo became a father, not a good one, not yet, but a present one, and Amara watched, measured, evaluated, not with the cold eye of a judge, with the careful eye of a woman who had learned that trust is not given. It is assembled piece by piece from evidence. The evening it changed was unremarkable. No orchestras, no dramatic lighting, no 300 guests in silk. It was a Wednesday. The triplets were asleep. Amara and Jisoo sat on her apartment balcony in Busan, overlooking the harbor. The city hummed distantly. "Hanil does the thing with his cuffs," Amara said. "What thing?" "Your thing. When he's thinking. He adjusts whatever's on his wrists, watches, bracelets, sleeves." Jisoo was quiet. "He's never met you before 6 months ago, and he does your gesture." "Genetics." "No, legacy." Amara turned to look at him. "That's what I was afraid of, that your world, the one that teaches you to close doors and adjust cufflinks instead of feeling things, would reach them no matter what I did. And now I've watched you sit on a floor for 6 months. Burn rice. Let Nari paint your face. Read the same bedtime story 47 times without once trying to negotiate a shorter version." She paused. "You're teaching them something different. You're teaching them that the man who adjusts his cuffs can also take them off." Jisoo didn't adjust anything. His hands were open on his knees. "I'm going to say something," Amara said, "and I'm not asking for a response. I'm not asking for a promise. I'm telling you a fact." He waited. "I'm giving you a chance. Not because you earned it perfectly, because you earned it honestly. And that's harder." She reached over and took his hand, not dramatically, the way you pick up something you've decided to keep. Not as a boss, as a man. And if you close that door again, if I see the cufflink go back on his armor, I will walk out with those 3 children, and you will not find us this time, because this time, I'll make sure of it. I understand. I'm not asking if you understand. I'm telling you." He almost smiled. Almost. The corner of his mouth moved a millimeter, the seismic equivalent of a laugh from anyone else. "Noted," he said. The same word he'd said in the lawyer's office 41 months ago, but weighted entirely differently now, full of everything that had happened between then and now. They sat in silence. The harbor lights shimmered on the water. Inside, Hanul rolled over in his sleep and adjusted the cuff of his pajama sleeve. And somewhere in Seoul, in the top drawer of a penthouse desk that Jisoo no longer used, a folded document sat in the dark. It had done its job, not as evidence, not as protection, as proof that even in the coldest architecture, someone had been trying to leave the light on. That was the story of Kang Ji-soo and Amara Carter, a story about the difference between silence and truth, and the terrifying moment when you realize that the thing you stayed quiet to protect is the thing your silence destroyed. If this story made you feel something, if you gasped, if you rewound, if you sat with that recontextualization moment and replayed every earlier scene in your mind, then you belong here. Subscribe to Aurora Love Saga, hit the bell, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Amara's place? Would you have given him the chance? Or or walked away for good. The next story drops soon, and trust me, it starts with a scene that will make this one look like a warm-up. See you there.